which is gaining attention because O'Connor's most recent public financial disclosure shows he has an investment in Tesla between $15,000 and $50,000. The investment is raising questions about O'Connor's fairness as a judge. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT Willow Springs, is powered by ComEd. Visit ComEd.com/clean.
Out Chicago.
We need your voices. We need people out there who are our allies, who are out there to help just get rid of the disinformation and the lies. That's the thing.
Make decisions based on passion, based on humanity, based on kindness, because what we're hearing from the other side is just the opposite of those things. It shouldn't be tolerated in this country.
Catch Out Chicago every Sunday, 11 to 1 on WCPT 820.
WCPT Replay.
And I am so pleased to be joined by Ray Suarez. His book, We Are Home, Becoming American in the 21st Century and Oral History.
Immigrants have the highest percentage of all demographic groups of workforce participation. And yet we treat these people and talk about them so badly. Now, part of that is an American habit. We were doing that in 1850. We were doing it in 1900. So there's nothing new about it. But, you know, countries should learn. They should be better places than they were 100 years ago. And we seem to fall back on those same old bad habits of thinking the worst of people who really make our lives affordable and comfortable in ways that we never quite take account of.
Keep listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
This is David Hochberg with an emergency mortgage alert. After 2 excruciatingly long years, mortgage interest rates are finally starting to drop. And while 60% of our competition is no longer in business, Team Hochberg is ready to help you, your friends, family, coworkers, neighbors reduce their rate and monthly payments. I want to share 2 important facts. First fact, you don't have to refinance with your current mortgage company. Second fact, Team Hochberg's closing costs and interest rates are almost always lower than your current lenders. If you purchased a new home or refinanced your existing home within the past 2 years, please call Team Hochberg now, not when you get home, not tomorrow, not next week. Call us right now for a complimentary mortgage rate analysis, 855-563-2843, or visit our website, 56david.com. That's 855-563-2843, or visit 56david.com. Lower.com, equal housing lender, NMLS 1124061.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
The following program, Collaboraction Radio, is sponsored by Collaboraction, and to the extent applicable, their guests. The views and opinions expressed therein do not necessarily reflect those of Heartland Signal, LLC, or its management.
Today. We're gonna have some fun though. Anyone else do that? When you're listening to a song and you start harmonizing with it? I do that all the time. Welcome, hello to Collaboraction Radio at the intersection of art, activism, and social change. Those were the phenomenal sounds of the one and only DJ Lady D, the iconic DJ and board president of Collaboraction. Thank you for joining us at Collaboraction Radio on WCPT 820 AM, Chicago's progressive talk radio, and also streaming live on Facebook and WCPT.com, or available on demand at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, everywhere else you get all of your digital goodness, your digital stuff. I'm Beverly, and I'm the interim managing director for Collaboraction. And Collaboraction is a 27-year-old nonprofit whose mission is to build knowledge, empathy, dialogue, and action, or what we call KIDA, around oppression and inequity through live theater, film, and now radio, that leverage the power of storytelling and community to cultivate positive social change. Collaboration Radio is sponsored by the Joseph and Bessie Feinberg Foundation, and today's episode of Collaboration Radio is sponsored by AV Chicago, Chicago's leading provider of AV production and event management services, and Elovoke. Elovoke is a purpose-driven destination and event management company that seeks to become a trusted strategic ally to your business as we delight your audience and generate impactful outcomes. Visit ethoseventcollective.com to learn more and schedule a meeting with their team. After our show today, if you feel impassioned and want to join the conversation, get to check in with me, have a good chat. Collaboration Radio is made possible by donors and members like you. So if you're listening, you like what we're doing, just come on down. Join the fam. Email radio@collaboraction.org or go to www.collaboraction.org to learn more. Just some fun updates before we get started today. We have so much going on. And if you don't know, you're about to know. The first being Kidsapalooza was phenomenal. I'm sure many of you have seen the wild TikToks and videos of what Lollapalooza looked like. I know Chaperone wasn't even a headliner, and she had the highest attended set, I believe, in history of a non-headlining act. So there was tons of pandemonium, but we were away from that. We were where the kids roam and got to have a good time there. And so from August 1st to the 4th, we had an amazing set with our youth programs, The Light and the Luminaries, who are led by the incomparable artist Pinky Ring and her artistic assistant, and also an incomparable rapper, hip-hop artist, and culture purveyor, Linda Soul. And that was a really fun time. And looking ahead, let me tell you where I was this morning. I had the privilege of being able to sit in for a few moments on La Habana Madrid, their first rehearsal. And when I tell you the magic that was in that room was indescribable, the voices of the actors, the singing, the storytelling, it is something you're going to want to see. And it's free. We love free, right? And so if you are interested in learning more about La Habana Madrid, it's going to be August 23rd at the iconic Pritzker Pavilion right in Millennium Park. Grab your friends, get a picnic going. Because when I tell you, you are going to be wowed not only by the story about what's a real place in Chicago, an almost lost place, but thank goodness for Sandra Delgado and the team for bringing the story to life, I should say. August 23rd, Pritzker Pavilion, La Habana, Madrid. Go to collaboraction.org, learn more. Go to Teatro Vista, our partners, for putting this on. It's going to be an incredible time. And so we've heard it said before, but we're going to say it again. We are building a new house of belonging in Kimball Arts Center right in the heart of Humboldt Park, really looking towards the future of what it means to be an ecosystem for artistic direction and social action. And so if you're interested in learning more about what we're doing there, go to the website, check it out. It's a pretty cute website, if I do say so myself. I helped spruce it up a little bit. We're doing a lot of really cool things, so definitely check it out. Now, if you're listening live, and like I said, it's just me in the studio today. So if you're listening live, you can call in at 773-763-WCPT. That's 773-763-9278. If you have any questions or things you want to share with either me or the thousands of listeners who are listening right now. So for today's episode, I want to really zero in on one of the biggest topics that folks are chatting about right now, which is, of course, the presidential race. And there's been so much momentum. I know that, Kamala Harris just named her vice president, if elected, and her running mate there with Tim Walz. And then we have, Trump and JD Vance. They're doing their touring right now, and it's starting to really ramp up. I mean, we're getting this much closer to the DNC, which is going to be right here in Chicago. And as we've continued to as a populace kind of see this all unfold, it's really interesting how this all intersects when it comes to art and activism and theater. And you may not think that, right? Especially in the political zeitgeist, there's often and rightfully so, an interpretation around a lack of investment per se in arts and theater and so on. But actually, that's not true. Before I tell, in my opinion, a really cool story about what happened last week for me, which was very much a surprise, I want to kind of level with the listeners who are maybe not aware of Kamala's connection to artistry. So just a few pieces. Folks may not know that Kamala joined the Board of Trustees at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art in 1996 and remained active through 2011, helping to launch a mentorship program for public school teens to learn more about modern art and be able to be more involved themselves in the art scene there. She served as a member of San Francisco's jazz organization and was chairperson for the city's symphony fundraiser. In June, I believe, of 2020, I'm going to fact check myself really quick. Yeah, in June of 2020, she co-sponsored a resolution recognizing the month as Immigrant Heritage Month, celebrating the contributions of immigrant artists and their children who have made history in the United States, both via our economy, artistically, and historically. And so it goes, going on and on and on and on. She has a very deeply rooted connection to arts, not only for herself. I think I read a little tidbit somewhere that she played the saxophone at one point, and the French horn and the violin. And I know her uncle as well worked at the Studio Museum in Harlem. So as we think about the evolution of this campaign, it's really exciting that we are able to see in real time, what that could mean for arts organizations like Collaboraction, like artists generally who are trying to continue to do this work. And so I'd love to share, but before I do, we're going to, I think we have a caller. So before I jump into my cool little story, I'm going to see who's calling in. I hadn't even started cooking yet.
We have Margot on the line.
Margo. Hello?
Margo. Yeah, I just wanted to say something. I'm really interested in the intersection between arts and social justice, but I've noticed that one thing that kind of gets ignored is I don't know if it gets ignored, but I think there should be more attention also paid to artists who have disabilities, whether they're musicians, painters, etc. And one other thing, are you aware, do you know the Awakenings Project in Chicago? And that's all I have to say, and I'll take my answers off there, and thank you so much. Bye.
Well, thank you, Margo. So I'm happy to pivot quickly because I want to make sure I give Margo space. So the first thing that, for those who are listening, Margo mentioned was about making sure that we're really considering intersectionality when we talk about artists and artist activism. So I'll pivot there for a moment. And then the other piece is I'm going to do research on what she had requested learning more about on the it seems to be either programmatic works relating to that activism. So offline, I want to chat with our artistic director, Anthony Mosley, to make sure that we're tapped in on what programming is happening there to advocate. But going back to her original, her opening point, and Margo, I know you hopped off, but thank you for chatting. I appreciate that you're listening. I think it's absolutely critical to constantly remind ourselves about what does it mean to be an advocate for social change in the art industry, right? Something that I really challenge folks who I partner with, and as an artist myself, when I'm working in collaboration with other artists, we have a tendency to think about what is in front of us, right? And when I say what's in front of us, I think about race, I think about gender, or sometimes sexual identity, ethnicity. Those are typically the ones that folks lean on because they're the ones that we're directly exposed to. And oftentimes it's what's reflected back to us in the media, right? There often isn't a lot of space when you think about movies and television where folks are talking about disability advocacy, when they're talking about socioeconomic status without it being almost like a hot button topic or something that's almost fetishized, right? Like we love the story in the media about the guy from the hood, right, who grew up with nothing, and then he meets a white guy who coaches him, and then he makes it to Berkeley and makes $1 million, or The Blind Side, right? We have those stories, but we don't have a lot of stories that receive the recognition that they deserve, because they're out there and they're being made by artists everywhere like Margot who want these stories told, but they're not getting that level of exposure to showcase the intersectionality. One really great example is the movie Coda, about a deaf and hard of hearing family, but with a daughter who is of hearing, and the dynamics of them working through, they have a business, they are a family dynamic, and also really, in my opinion, and I'd love to hear from somebody from that community's perspective, but from my perspective watching it, it was a really beautiful example of, this is a family who operates just like any other family. Now there are dynamics that were pervasive because of the disability, but it wasn't, it became a beautiful motif throughout, especially at the end. If you take a moment to watch it, you'll really love it. At the end, it becomes incorporated as a part of the victory of the ending plot. And so I think part of the reason there was such a national response to that work is because it was such a positive reflection of this is a family who is also deaf, not despite their deafness, they are successful, or whatever the case. And so to Margot's point, I do think that as we think about the upcoming election, as we think about our commitment, Collaboraction to social justice work, there's a critical importance to being especially mindful of the things we can't see and the seats that are not present at the table. And one thing I think about a lot is every day when I wake up, I have to put contacts in. For those who, are curious, I have a -8 and -8.5 in one eye and -8 in the other eye, right? So she's not able to see without contacts on and glasses on. And those are one of those things that I, when I wake up in the morning, throw my contacts in, go about my day, I don't often think about, what if I didn't have access to that? What if I couldn't just put contacts in, or couldn't afford glasses, or if they broke, I'm now, taping them up, or whatever the case. Those are those invisible things that if you get into a system of privilege, like I have the privilege of being able to purchase contacts, right, and be able to purchase multiple pairs of glasses. So if I lose one, I have another. Those are, again, another way that even in the ways we may not think about are also part of the kind of erasure of other identities. And so I don't presume to say that I'm at all blind, but that's another example where I've sometimes stopped to think, what if I didn't have the resources or allocation to be able to, move around and maneuver more easily because of contacts? And so where that goes back into artistry is you think about the stories that you ingest. I really do call upon those who are listening and those who are regular listeners. If you're listening to us for the first time, when was the last time you watched a show or a movie that had a coming of age story, or a you know what it's going to be? It's going to be a big inspiring story about the odds, right? It's always about the odds. When was the last time you watched a movie like that did not have to do with race, with gender, with socioeconomics on the extremism, right? Drug dealer that becomes a dancer and then makes it to Juilliard, right? We love that, right? But when was the last time you watched something like that that really was authentic? And if there's something that you're like, oh my gosh, I saw something that was super critical and deep and hit a lot of intentional points, please call in, tell us. I continue to try to watch a lot of indie films where producers and directors on the ground are doing that work, but share. Again, our phone number is 773-763-9278. Share, like Margot, what you feel is important. And so I think, segueing that a little bit into last week, I want to preface anything I say from this point until the end of the story is not a reflection of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. These are my own opinions and thoughts. They are not a reflection of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated's Lambda Chi Sigma chapter, who I am a proud chapter member with until I finish the story. They are only my own opinions and thoughts. And so I had the opportunity last week. I was taking videos and such for the National Conference for Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated that was in Houston last week, which was super exciting. Thousands of sorors from around the world came to Houston to do Sigma business, to give back to the community, to join in sisterhood, and to learn more about what we can do as a community to support one another. And so we found out very last minute, as I think the rest of the organization did, that Kamala Harris was coming to visit us and offer some words during our opening business session last week. And during the opening business session, or no, let me back up. When those communications came out, they sent out a little blurb that's saying she's coming, all hands on deck. But then at the bottom it said, if you are a member of the press and would like to be considered to be present for this event as press, please fill out this Google form here. And so my mom taught my sister and I the worst thing that people can say is no. And so I'm like, it's there. I clicked on the link, filled it out. I think I put our organization, then I also put Collaboraction, I believe. And I let it fly. And my perspective was there's probably hundreds of Houston-based media outlets who are trying to get a piece of this historical moment. But, let me throw it in there. At 11:30-ish, 11:45-ish p.m., the night before she was to arrive at our conference, I received on official letterhead from the White House that I had been approved to be press for the event and that we'll see you tomorrow morning bright and early at 11 a.m. And here's all the things that you need. And when I tell you from that point on, it was the wildest 24 hours of not only getting an official, I wish I brought it, and if I had to make myself an official Collaboration press badge, which is very cool if I do say so myself, and maybe we'll throw it on our website. But then, meeting all these other incredible journalists from Houston, from CBS, from private news channels coming together who all want to see what she's going to say. And so over the course of the day, thousands of members of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, as well as hundreds of other Divine Nine fraternities and sorority members, came to see her talk. And so after we got approvals to go in and we had got vetted by Secret Service, and I just want to say the Secret Service is no joke. I know we see in the movies and TV, they're in the black suit with the white button down and the black tie and the sunglasses, and it is nothing like that. They are so quietly poised that you almost would not notice they're in the room, which in one way is so freaky deaky when you're walking around taking videos. But in the other hand, it just goes to show how specialized these individuals are and how critical they are in the security of keeping our governing officials safe. And so they're around and they're scanning, and it was just a whole thing. And when we get in, Kamala addressed the body, and she got right to the business. And I think that's one thing that for anybody who's listening, regardless of what your political affiliation is, my whole perspective is, what are you going to do when you're in office? I personally, could care very little about, I think Trump had mentioned, she's calling herself black now. That's the big joke that he said, or I guess he wasn't joking, but it felt funny at the Black Journalist Association talk, and all these kind of like little digs at things that just are irrelevant. In my opinion, as a formidable political candidate, regardless of where you fall on the spectrum, because as I've said before, I believe it was 2 episodes ago, we've had phenomenal Republicans, we've had phenomenal Democrats, and we've had horrible of each. So if you're a formidable candidate, what are you going to do? Americans are tired. And they just want to know, like, what are we voting for at this point? Because the fanfare and the kind of the charades are tired. And so she came out, and I love it. It's like, dun, 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 dun. Like, they come out, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so presidential. And everybody's, I'm in the media pitch, by the way. So let me set the scene. I'm in the media pitch. I'm facing forward. I'm, trying to take pictures, squeezing in between. I've got the White House official reporting team on my right. I've got local Houston news on my left. I'm squeezing a little bit. I'm trying to take pictures. We're sweating. It's hot as heck in Houston. I believe it was like 100 degrees outside, so it was 97 and such inside. And she comes out, and she gets right to business. And during her speech, she talked a lot about, returning of abortion rights, or the right to choose, I should say. Her commitment to reducing overage fees from banks and credit cards who aim to kind of tax the lower, those who are lower income and those who have to use them, right, to survive. She talked a lot about the reinvestment in community service orgs and those like Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated who are on the ground every day, and other D9 sororities, I should say. We're on the ground every day doing critical work, and continued on and on and on. And, she spoke for 3 minutes, 4 minutes. The whole room, though, it felt like time had stood still because every word that she was saying resonated in the sense that you could tell that she very much was trying to, in as short as time as possible, let everyone in that room know, like, I'm getting to work. And so, again, we're in Texas. Texas is historically pretty red. And so, in that essence, right, again, she's telling us what she plans to do. And so later on that day, my mom and I had the fortunate privilege of being interviewed by Ed O'Keefe from CBS 2. I'm not sure what happened to that footage, so I hope we see ourselves someday from our chat with him. But he asked us about that. What are your opinions on Kamala's speech versus what Trump is saying? And I'll say the same thing here that I said to him. We just want to know, what are you going to do to help the American people move forward? We're not moving back. So what does that look like? And so how that all parlays into arts advocacy, as I teed up at the beginning, Kamala has a very staunch and long history with arts advocacy, not only having served on boards and being an instrumentalist herself, but also in her campaign works and her support of that. And so as we think about Margot, who called in just earlier about that, yeah, that's great. How do we apply it? And also my experience of the whirlwind of serving as press and seeing it from a different perspective. Instead of somebody sitting in the audience, I'm now taking pictures. I'm part of the history making, right? Because these are photos that I'm going to have now for forever. And of course, as I think about our collaborations with other partners, it's like, wow, okay, I'm seeing this from a whole different vantage point. But how that parlays into arts advocacy is, when you're thinking about that next candidate for the country, every major cultural element and design that moved the country forward was made by artists. It wasn't made by politicians. The slang that we use, the clothes that we wear, the way in which we communicate casually versus formally is all done by artists. Bridgerton is a huge thing. I'm obsessive with Bridgerton. Call in if you love Bridgerton. We can pivot and talk about that for hours. I love absorbing media, and at the same time, without artists, we wouldn't be watching Bridgerton. We wouldn't actually even be reading. Actually, we wouldn't even know the story, because Julia Quinn wouldn't have been able to print it. And so as you think about those who you are supporting, both on the national level with something as large as this campaign, but also on the local level, what really inspired me about her being on site is it did feel as though she was hyper conscious to reimagining and revisiting and reinstalling, frankly, social focused programs that will continue to enable those who maybe have been disenfranchised to participate in their artistic expressions because of these big corporate and big government initiatives that are specifically targeted to those who are otherwise abled or low socioeconomic, marginalized. And then empower them to, it's kind of as a byway to be empowered to continue to do your art. So I see that's inspired somebody. So somebody's calling on in.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you, Beverly?
I'm good. Thank you for calling in. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Aria. To our lovely Chicago listeners, I'm Beverly's little sister.
Yes. And you're more than just that. So I'm going to put you on blast a little bit. You're more than just my little sister. You're also a professor at Bradley University for animation, and I believe you're one of the first Black animated professors at Bradley. Correct?
No.
Or female?
No, I'm pretty, no, I mean.
Look at me putting her on. That's like big sister things though, right? We all can relate to that. I'm like, and you're this, and also you're at that, and so sorry to everyone else who paved the way before my little sister. Thank you for what you did so she could be in her seat. And Aria, you called in clearly because you're inspired by what I was saying and talking about. So help me kind of understand what you're thinking on.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I was with you. In Houston, and that was so incredible that Kamala made a surprise appearance. And even though I wasn't able to see her in person, watching her on the news, at home and our aunt and uncle's house was so electric. I mean, you really were hanging on every word, and it's just really exciting. The first point that I wanted to talk about is that the excitement of Kamala, fingers crossed, getting the presidential nomination, is that he really is getting us back to stability within politics. I just keep thinking about previous presidential elections and how there was just so much, respect for the job, respect for the American people, respect for the country, where even if two opponents were going against each other, there was never low blows. There was never, discrediting the other opponent based on superficial things such as appearance, such as how they talk. It really was talking about how they best felt that they were going to help the country and for the American people to decide which person that they believe would best get the job done. And now, for the past 8 years, it's just been a matter of watching WWE, versus a political circuit. I mean, it's a lot of, but less entertaining because it's the fate of our country, So it's really refreshing to see that we have a candidate that just absolutely respects the job, really wants to help the American people, understands that it's a big task, but she is clearly very prepared for it, and is willing to do that in stride and get back to the sense of, seriousness and, what's the word? She's getting back to, how it used to be where, the presidency was a respected position, and how we should treat it as a respected position and how it's so important. And it's not like a big show, right? It's not like a big, this is, a dictatorship, which the other candidate wants to have. But it's a huge, honor, as well as because it's, the person that dictates how the country is going to run. And so it's really great that we're trying to get back to a person that's willing to work with people on the other side of their political alignment and really collaborate and work with them, but also, you know, being first and foremost for the American people. So, and for people, you know, especially underrepresented Americans. So that was really exciting to see.
No, I agree. And I think, you know, something that's like an overarching theme to what you said, because I think just yesterday, Kamala was interrupted during one of her rallies by a group of protesters who were vocalizing what's still occurring in Palestine right now and the suffering that's occurring there. And she paused and gave them space. And people tried to boo her for giving them space. And she's like, no. And then validated and said, what I think you're trying to communicate is that you want me to vocalize what my stance is, and then immediately pivoted and vocalized we need to get hostages out there, we need to cease fire. Immediately pivoted and validated them being there. And I know many people, I was actually watching in real time on different social media websites, on Reddit and things, folks were pretty stunned by that. Because it's been a long time since we've seen a politician go, wait, okay, hold on. Like, you're here and I'm going to address you, but to do so with respect, it was critical. And so, and another thing to your point is, you know, I've mentioned before, I believe on, if not on Collaboraction, then just grander out there in the ecosystem, you know, the importance of civility, but really at the base, it's also the importance of empathy. One of the most beautiful exchanges that I remember seeing in American politics is with John McCain and Barack Obama, when a woman at John McCain's rally, I believe it was, came and started calling Barack Obama all kinds of names and saying all this and that. And John McCain said, he pulled the mic from her and said, no. We can differ on our viewpoints, but he's an upstanding citizen and he's an upstanding man and he's doing what he should for what he feels he believes in, just like I am. And we're just not going to do that here. Right. And he got booed. Several of his supporters were like, what are you talking? You know, and I've always felt that that's the empathy piece is what a lot of Americans have lost because of our ultra, I hate to say it because it's like, it's whatever. It's our ultra capitalist society, but like it is, we've really commodified the individualism of self. If you look at TikTok and the products being sold and the rotting, right? People are like, I just want to sit home and rot and, all these things, right? It's like, how do you buy as many products as possible so that you can stay at home and not engage with community at all, right? And there's obviously a spectrum. There's folks that are on one end of the spectrum who have agoraphobia, who have social anxiety. I'm not talking about those folks. And then there's folks on the other end of the spectrum who are so extroverted beyond themselves that they're hurting themselves by being so extroverted to avoid their problems. I'm not talking about them either. I'm talking about the folks in the middle who maybe can't remember that time or have not been exposed to the time when we used to sit around the lunch table and talk about politics. Or we used to talk about the most recent music that came out. I remember in 2010, in the height of recession pop, and I'm going to make this a theme. I'm going to be talking, I talked about it last radio show, and I'm going to talk about it again today. Recession pop is making a resurgence. I was just earlier today at the Air and Water, the water show, the show with the jets that go boom. I was just there and they were playing Kesha circa 2010. They were playing Flo Rida circa 2010. I was like, it's making a comeback and I'm here. Because I remember sitting at the lunch table with friends talking about us sitting together, watching the music video together, talking about it. Oh, this isn't as great as their last album. Yeah, I actually felt like Kesha's last. Oh, yeah. It was communal. Because, yes, we had phones then. For anyone who's younger listening, like, well, that's because we had phones then. But we wanted to talk about the most recent artistry that was coming out or the movie that just dropped. Hey, did you go? Let's go together. Let's do it together. And so I feel like in the absence of that I think is what has harbored some of that incivility is because we've almost, as a culture, forgot how to talk to people. And not in a way that's egregious, just in a way that is negligent. And so now we have to be especially intentional about how we engage. Otherwise, we enable politicians to showcase to us that it's acceptable, and it's not. So again, regardless of what you believe in, to your point exactly, Aria, the civility is so refreshing, and it definitely, I think, has started to shake the table in a really positive way. So I thank you for calling in and sharing your perspective.
Thank you.
I'll see you later. But yeah, so I think that it's exactly to Aria's point, and then compounding again, because Margot, I haven't forgotten about you. You know, we have to think empathetically about arts and its intersection, and whether you're a purveyor, you're just watching it, or you're a performer. How can we, this is a question I have to everyone listening, how can you be more intentional when it comes to engaging with your neighbor, when it comes to engaging with your friends, or with your partner, or with your coworkers? And I think I have another caller as well.
We got Roosevelt on the line.
Hi, Roosevelt.
Hi, how you doing? I'm sorry, you know my name. I don't know your name. What is your name, young lady?
My name is Beverly. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Pleasure here, too. Listen, Beverly, I'm going to get right to the point. Yesterday, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to exaggerate, and I'm going to be honest with you. I saw the rally that she had yesterday in Arizona. Saw the reaction on the people. And to come to the point, to getting to the point on my behalf, what do you think, because tears came to my eyes when I heard this song by Beyonce, which, by the way, she asked for permission to be used on her rally. I mean, I think it's a perfect song. I mean, it's perfect for the candidate, because you know that on the other side, he's been using a lot of Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, Elton John, and they've a lot of these artists have, not in so many words, told them that to cease and desist as far as using it, because Trump is using it without permission. Mm-hmm. And he always borrows everybody else's stuff without asking, or he's a bad person when it comes down to paying. I don't know if you're familiar with
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm going to close it with this. When you mentioned, I don't know what content, I don't remember what content you were saying, that there's great Republicans and great Democrats. I think the only great Republicans that are left are the ones that are Republicans for Kamala. I don't know if you're familiar. 3 of them are from the state of Illinois. Mm-hmm. Jim Edgar, ex-governor, Adam Kinzinger. Mm-hmm. Who's the other guy? Can't think of the other guy. Can't think for the life of me. Oh, Joe Walsh. Mm-hmm. Joe Walsh. So that's it. I don't know if you have any other callers, but that's what I wanted to talk about, the song, the way it's being used, and just in general, the Republican Party, which to me, in my opinion, doesn't exist. It's a cult, and it's run by a cult leader. It reminds me of a lot of things that have happened in the past, because this guy cannot do anything wrong. For the first time, we got basically a criminal running for president, in my opinion. And more than that, but you know the rest of it, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, I covered a lot of stuff. Actually, I only called for the song. So thank you for taking my call, and thank you for your time.
No,
I'm going to hang up and
Thank you, Roosevelt.
And it's a pleasure talking to you.
You as well, Roosevelt. Thank you so much for calling in. You gave me so much, and there's only so much time.
I know.
Oh, gosh.
I goofed up. I told Paul that I was going to only talk about the Beyonce song. And
no, oh my goodness.
Forgive me.
No, not at all. Thank you so much for sharing space with me today. So let's talk about May. Let's talk about Queen May. Gosh, Roosevelt touched so many things. I think one of the things that's profound about what he mentioned is art activism when it comes to respecting the property and rights of artistry, right? And so when you think about these campaign trails, and you're taking art and utilizing it to funnel your own agenda, despite the cries and pleas from the artist saying, please, this is not a reflection of what I believe in, right? You're saying effectively to artists, I don't care, actually. I'm going to interpret and use your art as I want, and you just should be happy because I'm giving you exposure, which every artist loves hearing, right? We love the exposure talk. Versus in this instance, Beyonce, who, if you're familiar with the Beyonce everything, you know that she doesn't let anyone use her music. Nobody gets access rights to use her music. And so the fact that she has allowed formally Kamala to use Freedom, which is from her Lemonade album, as the song for her campaign, says a lot about where Beyonce feels her artistry should align. And so there is a huge undercurrent and motif around the putting your money behind artists, right? But even as individuals ourselves, we've all heard about the wars with Spotify and Apple Music. And I want to be mindful because our podcast is on all of those platforms as well. But when was the last time you bought a record? When was the last time you went to a festival and you saw an artist that you really liked and then you saw their little stand that was to the left and they were selling, CDs that they pressed at their house, or even records, because I know that's coming back. When was the last time you bought one, knowing that money went directly to that artist? We love celebrating the Chappell Roans and all these other artists, the Sabrina Carpenters, all these artists that are starting to really blossom. The Grimeses as well. Some of my favorite videos is me watching them at festivals. And so your next favorite artist is probably somewhere in Chicago right now playing a gig tonight, who's going to have a little stand to the left with swag. And maybe as you walk by, you buy one, because Roosevelt called out something so important, which is it isn't just a politician ingesting the media, right? It's respecting what the art is trying to tell. And if my art wasn't intended to be weaponized, for example, but you're taking it anyway because you don't care about my art, you care about what it does for you. Everyone knows the Rolling Stones, so if I'm affiliated with the Rolling Stones, then there's an association, even though got several cease and desists, right? So that by itself is so powerful, and that Kamala received confirmation from Beyonce stating, I am comfortable with you using this work. But then pivoting onward, right, to Roosevelt's comment about the only good Republicans are those who run and support Kamala. I think what's really hard, and if I'm being empathetic, what is the Republican Party these days? Like, what is it actually? Because in the last 10 years even, we've seen Antifa, we've seen MAGA, we've seen hyper-right, we've seen Republican Central, we've seen centrist, we've seen so many amalgamations of what it means to be right-leaning. And I feel as though, and I know that may be polarizing, but in an essence of empathy, if I were a staunch Republican for many, 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 many years and have my staunch opinions on such and such, and then everything that has happened with Trump and all of the above has occurred, really, if we think past George W. Bush, right, there's a lot, I feel, of like self-preservation almost. Well, I've got my businesses and I've got my super PACs and I've got my money, and I'm going to just be over here and see what happens, because what is alignment now? And at the same token, I know some will hear me say that and think I'm giving too much grace, but I do think it's worth listening to, is like, okay, what even is that party? Same thing goes with the Democratic Party. And I hate to live in absolutes, because I think there are a lot of people right now who are just trying to understand what is the best decision what is right, what is left. And then there are some folks who just don't care about the country and are always going to be self-focused. But I hate to live in that mindset, because I think more often than not, at least from what I have seen in the research I've been doing, people genuinely want to try to do the right thing, even if they're heavily influenced by other factors, and we're human, right? In this essence, there are a lot of staunch Republicans who are like, if you're looking for a polished politician to represent, calling back to Aria, the honor it is to be the president of the United States, I'm going to align myself with someone who at least respects the seat. Because I was in Australia recently. I went a couple weeks ago with my sister, who was able to she was able to present at a conference some of her work. And I met some folks in Australia, and a few of them, we kind of got to talking about Australian politics and things like that. But of course, I'm the only American. What are y'all doing over there? Oh, wait, let me try. What are y'all doing over there? What is going on in America? You guys are going mental. Now I'm going into England. Just forgive. But really, they were like, what is happening? And, I said, I wish I knew. But also, what do you see? That was a question I found myself asking all week. What do you guys see? And the number one thing that everyone kept saying is, A, they felt bad for Americans. And B, they felt like the presidency was a joke. They're like, you guys treat it like a joke. Like it's like a funny thing to be the president of the United States. But I remember a time in which when people said, what do you want to be when I grow up? I want to be the president of the United States. Or I want to be an astronaut. I want to be an actor. The president of the United States was up there. And so to Roosevelt's point, I think a lot of folks on the right are aligning themselves with Kamala just because of the polish and poise around what it means to be a politician. Because negativity never raises you up. It will always bring you down. And so if you're a politician and this is what's being enabled to be loud and proud, that's going to eventually make its way to you. And so circling back to Beyonce, because at the end of the day, Beyonce, am I right? Beyonce. I think more and more artists are going to start to come forward with feeling more comfortable talking about, and I'm already seeing it happen on individual podcasts, about how, not just politicians, how movies, you've seen Taylor Swift's huge fight with Spotify, right? I think with movie rights, and we saw the writers' strike, I think we're in an era where with this upcoming election, Saturn has made its return. There's a lot of really exciting energy happening. Artists are coming forward and saying, okay, listen, my art is how I intended it to be, and I decide how it's extrapolated, how it's used. And, for those who are still deciding kind of how they feel generally about arts activism, it's more than just paying money to go see a show. It's more than just streaming your favorite artist and being like, well, I support them because I have logged 3,000 hours listening to their album. But did you pay tickets to go to their show? Did you pay tickets to? And so when you think about local Chicago artists, and as we build our house of belonging at Collaboraction, therein in Humboldt Park, we're about to build this space which will enable you to act on art activism by stepping forward and paying that artist directly, paying a group directly to continue to enable that work, but also on the local level to politicians and those in government who are telling you what they're going to do. Look at what they're not saying. Look at their behavior. And that'll tell you how they feel about the local theater group that you watch in your communities, about your local orchestra. I think about growing up myself. Some of my best memories are going to see the Chicago Symphony Orchestra when I was a violinist myself for 10 years. Are they funding that? Are they supporting that? And so what groups like, Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, what groups like Collaboraction, all these different groups are trying to do. And again, these are my opinions and my perspectives. They're not reflective of SG Row. But, you know, the goal of many folks on the ground is to continue to empower people to remove those barriers so they can find that voice. So, Margot, I haven't forgotten about you. For those who are continually left out with that seat at the table, it's equally critical that we remove as many barriers as possible so that chair can be pulled up. And we're saying, okay, how are we at concert venues being cognizant of long COVID? How are we being cognizant of those who are wheelchair bound or otherwise abled? One of my biggest pet peeves is when I am at a panel discussion or I'm at a conference of some kind and somebody takes the mic and goes, y'all can hear me, right? And puts the mic down. That is a privileged thing to be able to say. And we don't think about it because, oh, I can project, fine. You assume in that moment that everyone has the ability to hear you. And so all the way back, somebody who maybe couldn't get a seat in time and has a hearing aid or is deaf or part of the, you've just completely removed their ability to be able to engage with you and empathize with you. And so I call that out because at Boulé, which is where Kamala Harris spoke to Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, one of the best pieces of footage that I got when I was videotaping that entire week was actually at the very end of the week when we had Debrat come on stage, we had MC Light come on stage, and I mean, they lit it up. And on the left side of the stage were the sign language interpreters. And there was a little row where folks who were deaf or hard of hearing would sit in the front, and these interpreters were popping off. I mean, I'm sure you've seen these videos on TikTok and everywhere else. They were bringing a level of hype to the signing so that they could be just as engaged with us. And what I sincerely appreciated is that all of my sorors, we made sure that that space stayed wide open so that as they got up and sat down, nobody tried to take the seat, or every time they'd go up to sign, everybody kind of gave that space so they could enjoy with us. And at one point, one of our stroll songs came on and the signer was strolling with us and doing it. That is inclusivity in real time. It's not putting them in the back and having a little separate area. It is in having them in the mix. They were right up front. And so to kind of close before we wrap for today, if you've taken anything from the chat, it's consider the actions. Consider what they are doing and not saying when you think about, again, of course, the presidential election, but also the organizations that you support. And for those of you who are in Chicago, which I believe is everyone listening to this call, when was the last time you thought about the media you're ingesting and whether or not it hit a subject that wasn't right in front of your face? And if you haven't in a while, I encourage you to find independent media. That's my call to action to you. Sometime this weekend, look up, what is a movie or something, or an artist even, an artist that's hard of hearing, an artist that is otherwise abled, an artist that is self-funding. How can I use my privilege in any capacity to support them? Because as we near Election Day, it's those actions that are really going to enable us to be more empathetic and really enable us to move forward as a country, which we are able to do. In Chicago, I've lived here my whole life. You've got great genes, so we're going to get it done. Thank you so much to Margot, to Aria, to Roosevelt for calling in, and everyone else who may have been listening. And next time, chime in. Don't be scared. It's just me. Thank you so much. You were listening to Collaboraction Radio on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk radio. I sincerely appreciated you having you on with me. If you didn't catch it or just caught the end, we're streaming on all of the things. And so you can definitely listen in and check us out next week from 4 to 5 p.m. every Saturday. Wherever you are, I hope you're doing well. I hope you ground yourself. I hope you're feeling good. And maybe stand outside. It's beautiful today. Say hi to your neighbor if you haven't already. And if they're not nice, make some cookies or something. Thank you.
The preceding program, Collaboraction Radio, was sponsored by Collaboraction, and to the extent applicable, their guests. The views and opinions expressed therein do not necessarily reflect those of Heartland Signal, LLC, or its management.
This is an important announcement for anyone who wants health insurance, even if you missed the deadline. Right now, you can get the health insurance you and your family need from top insurance providers, even if you have pre-existing conditions or no insurance at all. The Plus Benefits Health Insurance toll-free number has been extended to help any